Shalom and welcome everyone to the ICEJ webinar series. I'm your host today, David Parsons, Senior Vice President and Spokesman for the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem, coming to you from our Jerusalem TV studios. There's been a lot of news over recent days. Israel with two targeted strikes. First on the the Hezbollah military chief up in Beirut, and then the political leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, while he was in Tehran, in Iran, helping to there for the inauguration of the new Iranian president, and Israel reached out its long arm and took him out as well, and lots of other things going on. But this week I want to focus on a particular issue that really is also at the heart of everything that's happening, and it's, can the Palestinian Authority be reformed? And our guest is Itamar Marcus. He's the founder and director of Palestinian Media Watch, which monitors the Palestinian media, their education system, everything they're saying and doing, and whether they're really trying to bring their people to a place of peace with Israel. Itamar, great to have you back on the webinar series.
Thank you very much, David. Great to be here.
Yeah. I think this is your second time since we got into the war with Hamas in Gaza last October 7th. I remember we were talking earlier then, what was the Palestinian Authority's message? Fatah, this rival faction to Hamas, and we're going to sort of get back into that today. But you always have fascinating stuff coming out, and you told me when I called you the other day about doing this program, you said you have a brand new report on this issue. Can you really reform the Palestinian Authority? Where is that? Where does it stand?
So the report's almost finished. The key mistake of the international community, and we see this because we hear the statements from Secretary Blinken, we hear it from the Europeans. The key mistake is that they're calling for a revitalized Palestinian Authority, and then they talk about more transparency, more democracy, possibly in better justice system. Those are all technical issues. None of them deal with the real problem of the Palestinian Authority, and that is that everything that it says and does and teaches vis-a-vis Israel makes them a terror organization. In fact, today we're going to be releasing a short report showing how Fatah, since October 7th, is continuously bragging about how they have been involved in, they don't call it terror, resistance.
The armed resistance.
Yeah, more than Hamas. And then they talk about 2/3 of the prisoners are from Fatah. And then they talk about 50% of the prisoners being from the security services of the Palestinian Authority.
That's in Judea, Samaria, the West Bank?
Exactly, in Judea and Samaria. In other words, what they're doing is they're bragging. This entire report showing how they're bragging, and we have probably 15 or so examples in this report of Palestinian leaders bragging how they have the majority of the terrorists. Literally that, and that in fact the Palestinian Authority security services are leading. Just last week, Israel killed a terrorist, and the next day he had a military funeral. As a member of the Palestinian Authority security services. So when you talk about revitalization, when the Palestinian Authority, when the Americans talk about revitalization, and they talk about transparency and less corruption, they're not even scratching the surface. They're talking about eggs when they should be talking about tomatoes. It's just a farce. Deal with the real issues. If you want Israel to have someone to talk to, you have to deal with the real issues of a terror-supporting entity.
So let's really get into why we're posing this question right now. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been under pressure from the U.S., from others, to sort of give his vision for what Gaza would look like after the war, post-war Gaza. And the world has said the Palestinian Authority needs to be brought back in to govern there. They lost control of the Gaza Strip to Hamas in 2007 in a very bloody coup, a fight, civil war between Fatah and Hamas there. and Hamas has been able to really, solidify its control and brainwash the people into this fight with Israel. But now, even in the hostage talks to try and get the Israeli hostages out, Netanyahu has continued to have to reject these efforts by world leaders to put the PA back, a reformed PA back in charge of Gaza. But you might be able to get a little more transparency, say, on where some of the finances are going. But the real problem, as you're saying, is the incitement to terror, the education to hate, the lawfare, that the PA is as bad as Hamas when it comes to trying to destroy the state of Israel.
You're very correct, David, and I'll even go beyond that. I'll even correct a slight mistake that you made, that everybody makes. You said that after Hamas took over in the Gaza Strip, they brainwashed the people to hate Israel.
They were already heading there.
Exactly. They were already there. The fight between Hamas and Fatah and the civil war that they had nothing to do with who hates Israel more and who wants to destroy Israel more. It only had to do with political power. And Hamas wanted the political power, so they took it from Fatah. Fatah has been, in fact, I'll go even beyond that. And I will say that Fatah created the power of Hamas. Today, when I say, how did they create the power of Hamas? A child grows up in Judea and Samaria, West Bank. He's educated in the Palestinian Authority schools to hate Israel, to glorify the terrorists, to see the terrorists as heroes. He goes to the Fatah summer camps and he learns how to use arms, how to fight, how to be terrorists. The summer camps are named after terrorists. They have posters of terrorist prisoners in the summer camps, people who've murdered many, many people. So their whole life, the Palestinian child is brought up to glorify and honor terrorists who've murdered Israelis. And then he reaches age 16, 17, 18, sometimes even 14. And he says, hey, wait a second. Hamas is doing this more than Fatah's teaching me, but Hamas is doing something. I'm going to join Hamas. The PA created the power of Hamas. If today the polls in Judea and Samaria show that if there were elections, 70 or so percent, or 80% would vote for Hamas. In fact, in Judea and Samaria, it's even higher than Gaza. It's close to 80% would vote for Hamas. A small percentage, 5, 10, 7, I forget the exact number, would vote for Fatah. That's because Fatah, and that's with Fatah ruling the West Bank. And these polls were true before October 7th. Even before October 7th, Hamas was way ahead in the polls. 2 years ago, when there were supposed to be elections, at the last moment, literally 1 month before elections, Fatah, Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the PA, canceled the elections because every poll said Ismail Haniyeh was going to be elected, who was just killed this week. Ismail Haniyeh was going to be elected as president, and Hamas was going to be ruling the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. So he canceled the elections. So the popularity of Hamas was created by Fatah, and their fight and disagreement is not about destroying Israel, but just about who is going to lead the war and who's going to be the president when they destroy Israel.
Yeah, the last Palestinian elections were 2006.
Correct.
Yeah, and when you have student elections, say at Birzeit University near Ramallah, Hamas always wins.
Yeah, well, the reason was they won, and people don't forget, in 2006, Fatah lost. Hamas won in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank cities. Hamas won in both places. So already then Hamas was leading in the polls. So that was leading in popularity. So Fatah created Hamas. If Fatah is going to change, they have to change everything, and we could get into some of the details of what they have to change and what their messages are, but Fatah is the problem, not Hamas.
Yeah. So the international community says, look, all we need is for the Palestinian Authority to appoint a technocratic government of experts, someone to make sure, the water lines are working and the power lines and whoever, make sure everything's running on time. And we've seen this before with Salam Fayyad years ago, But that just really, they really don't have any power. That just frees up Mahmoud Abbas and the whole Fatah, the whole Palestinian Authority apparatus, frees them up to pursue this agenda of destroying Israel. It's going to make no difference, is it, in the incitement, the hate education, the lawfare. It'll make no difference. And why can't the West see this?
We're about to release a report on Fatah's educational magazine for children. We already released a report last year, and now we have an update on the new magazines that have come out since our report. If you read that, how Fatah is teaching their children, it is black on white. Israel has no right to exist, and Israel will be destroyed. This is Fatah children's education. It's not like we're seeing nuances there. Well, maybe they really didn't mean it. It is explicit in this education. For whatever reason, there could be many different ones. Different countries have their different reasons. The world refuses to accept that Fatah is a terror organization. They say if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. Well, let me tell you, the PA walks like a terror organization. They quack like a terror organization. They kill like a terror organization. They reward terrorists like a. Why aren't they considered a terror organization?
You must feel like a lonely guy bringing up a lot of this. You're just monitoring what they're saying themselves in Arabic and in the Palestinian Authority media channels, what they're doing in their schools. But you don't see this even in a lot of the Israeli media, just how bad, how Fatah, the Palestinian Authority, is still totally sold out to destroying Israel. Even a lot of the Israeli media doesn't cover this. But you do have some friendly ears, people listen to you in some of the parliaments around the world?
Well, in the early years, they didn't really want to listen, but by now, almost all of our major findings have been accepted by the international community. One of the most important things that we exposed was the fact that the Palestinian Authority pays salaries to terrorists. And we have
pay for slay.
What they call the pay for slay. And terrorists who go to jail get a high monthly salary.
Higher than the civil servants or the
higher
police?
Than civil servants, 3 times as high eventually. Yes, it gets up to 12,000 shekel a month.
Depending on how long you've been in jail or how many Jews you killed.
Well, not how many. People make that. Netanyahu made that mistake, unfortunately. It's how long you're in jail, like you said. It's as long as you're in jail. The longer you're in jail, if you're in jail for 30 years, you get 12,000 shekel. The average Palestinian Authority civil servant is less than 4,000 shekel. And in fact, for the last
12,000 is around $4,000.
Yes, exactly.
A month.
Yes, a month.
My, that's a huge salary in the Palestinian area.
Yes. Instead of $1,000 a month, it's $4,000 a month. So that's an incredible award and it's an incredible statement. And now, if there really is a deal, and many of these lifers who've been in there for many years are going to get out of jail, they are going to be thousands of Palestinian released terrorist prisoners roaming around. Not just roaming, but gloating about their money. And they're going to be building big houses because they have hundreds of thousands of dollars. Abdallah Barghouti, who's a Hamas terrorist, who's in jail, and he's probably near the top of their list of people that have to be released, of Hamas's list. He's serving 67 life sentences. He was a bomb builder. He was arrested in 2003, and he's been in jail all of these years, so he has made we've seen over $200,000 in salary sitting in jail. Now he's going to
goes to his family.
No, it goes to him.
It goes to him.
He has a right to share it with his family. And this is very, very interesting. The PA comes to the international community and says, oh, these poor families, they don't have any money, the husband's in jail. But that's not true. We have a documented video that we released a number of years ago. Maybe we should re-release it now, where a Palestinian wife of a terrorist in prison was complaining to the moderator. Her face was hidden. She didn't want to get killed. And she complained that her husband's salary, he wasn't giving to her because they'd had a fight. So he wasn't giving her a salary, and there she was without her kids. And the moderator said, I'm going to go to the Minister of Prisoner Affairs and ask him. So she went and interviewed Isa Karaka, who was the Minister of Prisoner Affairs. And his answer was, you're right, he should give it to his wife and children, but he doesn't have to. It's his salary. He's earned this. And he has a right to do with it what he wants. And then he promised that he would go and speak to the prisoner. So he went and spoke to the prisoner and asked him to give it to his wife. And then he came back and he said, I did. The point is, though, it's the principle. It's a salary for the terrorist.
Yeah.
And by the way, 2/3 of the terrorists aren't married. And they get the same high salary as the terrorists who are married. Again, the same 12,000 shekel a month. So they're not sharing it with anyone, they're saving it up. They all believe that they're going to get out of prison eventually, even if they have life sentences, even if they have 50 life sentences. Like Abdallah Barghouti and Ibrahim Khamed and other Palestinian terrorists. They all believe they're going to get out.
So Israel has detained or arrested hundreds and hundreds in Judea, Samaria, in the West Bank, and also some of the Hamas prisoners from Gaza. Are they getting paid? And if you release a lot of these guys as part of a hostage exchange deal, does the money stop flowing to them, or they get it out of prison? What do you think?
Okay, so first of all, there's a great question. Under Palestinian Authority law, anyone who's in jail for more than 5 years, once they're released from jail, continues to get the same salary. So Abdallah Barghouti, if God forbid this monster is released, the one who killed 67 people with the bombs he built, he's getting now 12,000 shekel per month. He's going to continue getting 12,000 shekel per month. So we have a documented case.
And that is EU and American tax dollars.
Yes, what the EU and the Americans try to do is they pretend, self-deception. Okay, we're giving them money to pay the teachers and to clean the streets, and that's coming from another budget. I don't see what's going on. You know, see no evil, hear no evil. Yeah, we're just taking care. Well, everybody knows that if you're paying for the teachers and you're paying to clean the streets and you're doing it specifically so that they can pay it's an outrage.
Yeah.
It's immoral.
The fungibility of money.
Of course, it's absolutely immoral, and that's the joke. So, you know, how can anyone not define them as a terror organization when they're paying terrorist murderers 3 times the salary that they're paying teachers and civil servants?
Is the Palestinian Authority paying some of the Hamas guys who have now been they're prisoners from Gaza?
Okay, so that's a fantastic question, and here's what we've discovered. So first of all, at previous wars, the wars that Israel fought against Hamas in Gaza, we know for sure that everyone who was killed and recognized as a martyr, their families got salaries, and people who were arrested also got salaries. And we know this because there were complaints in the Palestinian Authority press that they hadn't started paying the salaries yet because it took so long to process. And then eventually the Minister of Prison said, we are now starting to pay salaries to all the families of all the martyrs in Gaza. So we know it took about 2 years for them to process it because the PA and Hamas are fighting each other, or at least, not talking to each other. So we know that they pay. Now, what's happened now is there have been 900 members of Hamas, 900 members of Hamas who the Palestinian Authority has recognized already as prisoners. So they're already eligible to start receiving. And since October 7th, there have been close to 5,000 terrorists arrested in Judea and Samaria who are also, and they're probably all getting salaries already.
That's a lot of money. How do they pay for all this?
It's incredible. It's a vast amount of money. The budget for paying the salaries and the families of the martyrs before October 7th was about $350 million a year. It's unbelievable. $350 million. Now it's going to skyrocket because, just the ones in Judea and Samaria where they know who they are, they are going to be. I think we recently did the figure. They're going to be getting an extra $12,000 a month for these salaries to the prisoners just from Judea and Samaria. So it's an enormous. I'm sorry, $12 million. $12 million a month. $12 million a month just for the new prisoners. So they're going to go into further debt, and at the same time that they have all these extra debts to terrorists, the World Bank announced that they're raising the grant to the Palestinian Authority from what it was last year, which was, I think, $75 million to $300 million. Oh, and I think there's the money to cover it. The World Bank just came, which of course is Western money, United States money, all the Western countries as well. And the EU also announced a massive 300 million euro grant to the Palestinian Authority. So it's unethical, it's immoral to give money to the Palestinian Authority, who is then spending it on teaching terror and rewarding terror.
And that frees up Hamas to spend its money on weapons and tunnels and everything else. Let's talk a little, the relationship, a little more on that between Fatah, Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, and Hamas. The world says, let's put a reform PA back in there. They've already appointed a technocratic government, a cabinet of experts, but they haven't changed a single policy. But Hamas has said, we'll accept a government of consensus, Palestinian consensus in Gaza, where they are trying to be a part of it, have reconciliation between Fatah and Hamas. They just met in China and signed some agreement. And how far along is that? Do you see them in any way reconciling? Because they're also bitter rivals.
Yeah, that's what happened in China was a PR event for the benefit of the
sake
Chinese.
of China.
Exactly. Yeah, it had nothing to do with reality. We saw immediately how the Palestinian Authority completely minimized the event, hardly reported on it, except for a few lines here and there. The Chinese made this big statement, and the international press said, "Oh, look, there's finally unity." Fatah didn't even, barely mentioned it, and the reason is simple. Fatah can never have a unity government right now with Hamas because Hamas is so popular and they are so unpopular. They would call elections or something like a normal democracy, and then Fatah would disappear. Fatah needs to continue with dictatorial control funded by Western countries because the Palestinian population doesn't want them.
And it's barely control of Ramallah, much less Judea area.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. There were demonstrations all over yesterday in support of Ismail Haniyeh. Ismail Haniyeh.
So this is Hamas supporters marching in the streets of the capital of the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah.
Of the West Bank city. So it's so that's why this unity talk is it's like there's a real world that's going on, and if you look at the international press for so many years, they're describing a world that doesn't exist in any which way. It's a world that doesn't exist. If you want to know what's existing, go to Palestinian Media Watch website, palwatch.org. Read what they say, what they do, what they're talking about. Read today's bulletin, which describes how Fatah celebrates how they've been the leader in terror. The international press, it's literally, it could be talking about Mars.
Let's slow that down. Your website is palwatch, palwatch.org. Correct. Okay. Look, we talked about it when you were on the webinar a few months ago about the PA messaging, the Palestinian Authority messaging, Mahmoud Abbas about October 7th. Has that changed? We've seen a bit of a mixed message from them, supporting Hamas, supporting the terror, but also blaming Hamas for the destruction in Gaza. What is their messaging about October 7th, about the destruction there? And concerning Hamas, what have they said about the death of Haniyeh?
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning, because there have been periods. October 7th was, for the Palestinian population, the most extraordinary thing that just literally had ever happened. In one of the first polls that was taken by a Palestinian polling agency in November, Palestinians were asked, are you proud about what happened on October 7th and its aftermath, et cetera, all this whole period of time? 98% said they were proud. Wow. 98%.
This is in
West Bank and Gaza.
Both.
Yeah. In fact, they said, you had a choice, extremely proud or somewhat proud. 94% were extremely proud, and another 4% were somewhat proud. In other words, they have been brought up so many years by Fatah, by the Palestinian Authority, to believe that the murder of Jews is something that's going to happen. It's something that Allah wants, that God wants himself. The Jews are deserving of this. And then they went and did this horrific killing. Wow, they were all proud. They were all proud. Interesting, 75% or so supported what Hamas did. Why? Because they were proud that it happened, but they didn't support it because Gaza was already half destroyed. This was already the end of November. So that was it. And then as the war in Gaza continued, and as Hamas' popularity was still high, the Palestinian Authority changed its tune from total support for October 7th to support for October 7th, but condemning the Hamas for not understanding how much tragedy they would bring on the Gaza Strip. They have never once condemned what they did. Never once condemned a murder, a rape, a killing, a decapitation, burning people alive. Never once condemned that because they believe they have a right to do that. They claim they have a right to do that. They've never condemned that, but they've condemned Hamas, and they've said things like, you can't judge an action by what you do. You have to judge it by its long-term results, and the results are terrible. So, and that's such an important thing, because the world, again, the Western world, the Western media, Fatah is condemning Hamas. They're not condemning murder. They're condemning the tragedy they brought on Palestine.
Yeah, if Israel had done as the world demanded, get a ceasefire and all that support, extremely proud of October 7th, you would have had a Palestinian society even more hardened and believing in armed resistance. The way of terrorism brings results. That would have been horrible. Thank God the government, Israeli leaders and the military have kept fighting. What is the messaging about the death of Ismail Haniyeh? He's a big rival of Abbas, but...
So the Palestinian Authority declared day of mourning. They lowered all the flags to half-mast.
All the shops are closed
yeah.
today?
Yeah, today. Yeah, they're having a full day of mourning for Ismail Haniyeh and the flags at half-mast. The Jibril Rajub,
he was killed early Tuesday. It sinks in.
Yeah.
And on Thursday.
Yeah, they have this. They declared today more. But Jibril Rajub, who is one of the top Palestinian Authority figures, he's the Secretary General of the Fatah Central Committee. He would very much like to be, and he's certainly in the running, to be the next leader of the Palestinian Authority. And he talked about it. He's a comrade, he's a friend, he's a hero. I can't remember all the different terms of praise that he wrote. He wrote a very long post on his Facebook page. A comrade. In other words, there's no air between Ismail Haniyeh and his goals and his demonization of Jews and Jibril Rajub, literally, and that's what you see there. And people have to understand again. You know a person by the friends they keep. You know when the PA glorifies all of these terrorists who are killed. By the way, when 12 children were killed in Majd al-Shams. 12 Israeli children were living in Israel, in the Golan Heights, the Druze community. The PA did not issue a condemnation.
Nothing.
Complete silence on this. It was reported as a news report. Some of the people actually said it was actually an Israeli missile. They did that. No condemnation of Hezbollah, which is, again, unbelievable. They killed Arabs. They killed Druze. You'd think that they would condemn it? No, they didn't condemn it because Hezbollah is fighting Israel. Hezbollah has killed Israelis. Hezbollah cannot be condemned.
Okay, you mentioned Jibril Rajub. He used to be the Palestinian Authority security chief in Judea, Samaria, in the West Bank. But over recent decades, he's been like a sports and culture minister, leading this crusade to ban Israel, even recently from the Paris Olympics. He's fought it. He's never made any real headway, but he's a bit of a clown. But you say we got to take him more seriously. He actually could replace Abbas, who is old and reportedly ill.
Yeah, Abbas is 85, 86.
If you can't get Marwan Barghouti out of jail, he's one of the leading candidates. Yeah,
he's definitely sees himself as a leader. There, like I said, his position as Fatah secretary puts him in a position of maybe 1, 2, or 3.
There's another guy though that
Mahmoud al-Alul, you might be thinking of.
Yes, who seems to be better positioned to take over.
Mahmoud Abbas created a new position for him because Abbas apparently doesn't want Rajub. So he created a position that had never existed before, which is called Deputy Fatah Chairman. So when he appointed Mahmoud al-Alou to be deputy chairman, there seemed to be an indication that that's what was being done.
He's chairman and suggests he's the one to take over.
Yeah, because he's a deputy chairman. It suggested that. And then they also gave him a lot of TV time and press time. Mahmoud al-Alou has similarly celebrated murder and terror and killing people. I have a special relationship with Jibril Rajoub.
He knows you by name well. He always references you. I'm
well,
sure.
we fought him when he was trying to get Israel kicked out of FIFA. We fought him, and what did we do? We didn't defend.
That's the Soccer Federation.
Yes,
football.
The International Soccer Federation. We put in a complaint against him to have him kicked out. And then we contacted hundreds of NGOs and gave them our report and our complaint, and said, given copies of the same complaint, and many of them did. I'm sure we contacted you as well, and you probably did as well. And with all of these complaints in there, in the end, FIFA rejected the complaints against Israel, and they suspended him for a year. So he had
yellow card.
So they said he went on TV with a special press conference the day that he was suspended, and he says, "This is organization Palestinian Media Watch. They chase me everywhere in the world, and they go and they do this and they go." And they said, and their chairman is the Goebbels of the 21st century.
Oh my!
so
with a kippah.
Exactly, I'm Goebbels of the 20th. So we really made his life miserable for quite a while. As he was trying to attack Israel, we went literally every country that we went to. We spoke to their Secretary of State or their foreign ministry. We said, "Don't bring him in. He's a terrorist supporter." We made his life miserable, and it deserves to be.
Itamar, I do have to commend you because I knew when you all first started up in the 90s, I knew you then. I was just starting to work for the Christian Embassy, and you've never let the foot off the gas. You've stayed at it for years and years, and part of the problem is that they just keep feeding it to you, all these outrageous conspiracy theories and demonization and everything, and you've provided a very, very valuable service for all of us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to talk for a minute about lawfare, because we were just in The Hague a couple weeks ago with a large Christian gathering to try and weigh in on this advisory opinion that the International Court of Justice was going to make on Israel's illegal occupation of the Judea Samaria, what the world calls the West Bank. And the advisory opinion came out 2 weeks later. It basically criminalizes Israel's presence in these areas. What was the PA response?
Oh, the PA celebrated this. In fact, the PA took credit, saying that it was their initiation, and therefore, they deserve to be honored by their population. Look what we've done. Look what we've done to Israel. And of course, it was a complete farce. I'll tell you something. The agreements signed between Israel and the Palestinian Authority explicitly give Israel the right to administer all of what's called Area C of the West Bank. That's where all the settlements are. That includes Jerusalem. Israel explicitly has the right. Now, what does this mean?
Until a final status agreement is
That's
reached.
right. Until the status is changed. In other words, if Israel gives them
settlements are legitimate.
And absolutely 100% by the deal that's signed between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. It's also by UN 242, which I won't get into the details of because there's no time. But the point is, it's 100% legal. Now, what does this mean for Israel? This means for Israel that we could never, ever negotiate any kind of a deal with the Palestinians again on any issue because the international community doesn't care what we sign. They're going to make a decision or decide policy based on their hatred of Israel. Europeans for years have been saying that building in Judea and Samaria is illegal. They know it's not illegal. They know that the signed agreements make it legal. We don't think it should be legal. Well, so then why did Israel sign an agreement? It means that Israel can never trust a signed agreement. It means that there's no point in negotiations to Israel. The worst thing that the international community can do is tell Israel, we don't care what you sign, we're going to impose our own anti-Israel ideology in any case. It means there's no longer possible to have a peace process with the Palestinians.
So back to our overriding theme for today's program, can the Palestinian Authority be reformed? If you're really going to reform it, then they would stop all this lawfare against Israel in the International Criminal Court, where they're really behind these accusations of war crimes committed by Israel, the whole South Africa genocide case in the International Court of Justice. They're all behind it, Western funded. The West has to reform its policies to begin with in funding the pay-for-slay, funding the lawfare. It just seems that we're feeding all of this in an open sight. If you want transparency, here it is.
Exactly. If the West really wanted the Palestinian Authority to be revitalized, to be reformed, they would say, not one penny until you stop paying salaries to terrorists. Not one penny until you take all of the material in these magazines that you're teaching your children, your official Fatah magazines that poison them with hatred, and erase them from every bookshelf in the Palestinian Authority and never write those messages. Completely redo all the Palestinian school books. Any leader on TV who talks about destroying Israel will be arrested for incitement to murder. These are the changes that have to happen. When you talk about transparency, without this, it's a farce.
So, I mean, it's been debated here in Israel publicly and in the government. Why don't you just allow or force the collapse of the Palestinian Authority itself? They've even talked about dissolving themselves, to sort of shake up the game and all. But why does Israel still allow the PA to sit there in Ramallah and try and undermine everything Israel tries to do to bring peace in the region?
Israel definitely has a dilemma, because we don't want to be responsible. We talked before about the cleaning of the streets, and we don't want to be responsible for the education and for the electricity and for all of the civil life that's happening in the Palestinian Authority. We don't want to. We want to let them govern themselves. The problem is that they have not been able to separate that, just normal civil government, from its terror entity. It's all to support its terrorism. All the civil administration is to support the Palestinian terrorism. So Israel's dilemma is, do we have them collapse completely, and then we really have to do something about running the day-to-day lives of them, giving them water, making sure that they have food deliveries, etc., and then we can eliminate the terror, or do we just put up with the terror? I think Israel's making a big mistake. I think we really have to let them collapse. I think there has to be a transition period where there's going to be a lot of social turmoil, economic turmoil, a lot of possibly crisis for the Palestinian population. And when they realize that this was all brought about because their leaders were terror supporters, and that Israel really actually cares about them more than their own terror leaders, maybe then they will be willing to appoint a new leadership that has no connection to terror. They're going to have to pay the price of supporting terror for all these years, and I don't mean in terms of killing, or I don't mean letting them die of of hunger. I'm talking about they're going to have to go through some kind of a crisis in order to realize Germany supported the Nazis in World War II. They had to lose the war, they had to go through this crisis, and eventually they got out of it and they built something new. Palestinian Authority population, the Palestinian population, has to be denazified. They have a Nazi ideology. 98% thought it was wonderful to massacre Jews on October 7th. That denazification will not happen in these tiny steps. We will have to see some kind of a collapse, international community take over, re-educate, and then build up a new population that's willing to live in peace with Israel.
That sounds a little like the Let Israel Win campaign by Daniel Pipes in Middle East Forum. He says you have to make them have a real sense of defeat and then rebuild from scratch.
I agree completely with Daniel Pipes on this issue. He's been talking about this for a number of years, and everybody's afraid what's going to happen. I'm afraid too. I don't know exactly. But this certainly, if we continue doing the same thing, we'll have another 10, 20, 30, 40 years of terror. We've got to try something new.
Last question here. The international community says the way out of this war is to get back to the two-state solution, get back on track, give the Palestinians some sort of diplomatic horizon that they'll move towards peace. But and the sort of sense is that you got to force a two-state solution on Israel. But I think you have to force it on the Palestinians even more, because they don't believe in a two-state solution.
The Palestinian Authority never told its people that they believe in a two-state solution for long term. Yeah. For them, it's a temporary. For them, it means that what happened from Gaza could then happen all around Israel. I mean, Israel had trouble patrolling a tiny border from Gaza. It's compared to Judea and Samaria. Which the border is probably 4 times as long. Israel would have to have soldiers in tanks in Tel Aviv and Petach Tikva and Ra'anana, and the whole coast of Israel would have to have tanks and armaments and a whole army if we were ever to do the insane thing of creating a Palestinian state. The Palestinian Authority, after the Oslo Accords, had a few years to prove that they really gave up their PLO, destroy Israel ideology, and they've proven just the opposite. They are not deserving of a state. Israel has to develop Judea and Samaria, build it up as much as possible. The only way Palestinians will stop trying to destroy Israel when they're convinced that they can't destroy Israel. And that means, first and foremost, Israel has to build up completely with 5 million people in Judea and Samaria. Let the Palestinians have their little cantons that can be united in some kind of a way. But that has to be the solution. Giving them a state so that they can use it to launch another 10 October 7th is ridiculous.
Yeah. All right, on that bleak note, we want to thank Itamar Marcus of Palestinian Media Watch. Again, you can go to palwatch.org, palwatch.org, to see all their work there. It is alarming when you go and visit, but I just encourage everyone to go there and check it out and learn how to use that in your advocacy for Israel. But that's our time. Thank you, Itamar.
Thank you, David.
And we'll be back next week with another episode of the ICEJ webinar series at 3 p.m. Israel time next Thursday. Meantime, at the top of the hour, you can join us at the Global Prayer Gathering every day, 4 p.m. Israel time, praying with Christian leaders and Christian intercessors from all over the world, praying for Israel, this region, and your own nations during this very difficult war here in Israel. God bless you from Jerusalem.
Thank you for joining us for this informative webinar. Be sure to subscribe to our social media channels or visit our website at icej.org for upcoming webinars and more ICEJ exclusive content.
Tuesday.
October the 7th, 2023, changed the nation of Israel forever, leaving scars that will never fade. As we approach 1 year since that dark day, Israel still faces much uncertainty and unfair criticism all around the world. At this year's feast, the ICEJ invites Christians everywhere to come up to Jerusalem to show their love and support for Israel as never before. Come bear witness to the tragedy which struck this nation. Come represent your nation in standing with Israel and the Jewish people. Come encourage Israelis still trying to rebuild their lives. And come worship the Lord in Jerusalem with fellow believers from around the world. Feast 2024 will be unlike any other in Israel's history. Don't miss this chance to comfort Israel when they need us most.